All right, let's go big screen on this and play this, and then we'll get some opinions.
So in all of our analysis, and you've heard the data, 800 military bases, 85 countries, special operations, 160-something countries, 3,829 military units in the United States. China got one in Djibouti. But they supposed to be so imperialist. And you attack nobody for hundreds of years. Now, that doesn't mean that China doesn't have its repressive elites. I'm with my Muslim brothers and sisters when they mistreated the Uyghur people. You got to be morally consistent. So in all of our analysis, and you've heard the data, 800 military bases, 85 countries, special operations, 160-something countries, 3,829 military units in the United States.
One more time with the Uyghurs. That's right. All right.
China got one in Djibouti. But they supposed to be so imperialist. And you attack nobody for hundreds of years. Now, that doesn't mean that China doesn't have its repressive elites. I'm with my Muslim brothers and sisters when they mistreated the Uyghur people. You got to be morally consistent. So in all of our...
Stop it. Yeah. All right. So, fam, that is so bad. And the reason why what makes it really bad is not even the fact that if you go and do a little research and you understand, some of the radical Uyghurs and where it comes from, back Operation Mongoose or Operation Cyclone. Like I said, I always get those mixed up. But we funded the Mujahideen in Afghanistan with Stinger missiles, which were also very, very radical. But we used the Uyghurs to run those Stinger missiles into Afghanistan, and therefore a lot of them were radicalized. There were another radicalized group, not all Uyghurs, but a group of Uyghurs, right? So number one, it's the blood is on our hands. The radicalness and the funding of it is on our hands. But also he made a comment and implying my Muslim brothers and sisters, right, to make it sound like China is bad to Muslim people. That's what it came off as in my mind when I heard that, when he said my Muslim brothers and sisters, to kind of make this kind of insinuation that Muslims are mistreated in China. Well, we had on the, on this show before, we've had Don DeBar on. We had him on Jimmy Dore last Friday, and he had just happened to get back from China with Cynthia McKinney. And a lot of people have talked about this. Jose Vega just got back. It's false. It's a CIA talking point to manufacture consent for sanctions against China, to drum up a war against China. And it's beyond disappointing that he would repeat those lies, because what does it really help? And it sounds like it's just a giant virtue signal as well to the people in that room, And he's done shit like this before. He talked about Russia with them, made an insinuation that they were jailing all these people in Russia for not fighting the war. So you want to talk about being morally consistent, Dr. West? You need to be morally consistent. Go right ahead, fam.
It opens the door for this sort of like AOC type of like imperialism. It's like intersectional imperialism. Oh, we're saving the Ukrainian people from the evil imperialist Russians. Oh, we're saving the Uyghurs from the evil imperialist China. So it takes accountability away from the United States, and it puts it on another country, whether it's China, whether it's Russia, and it makes it so these other countries are just as bad as the United States, which is then used to foment regime change. I'm sure it's been said on Iran as well. The infringement of rights of women, blah, blah, blah. That's the sort of progressive type of imperialism you get with these sectors. And I think Cornel West should be heavily criticized for that, because it's bad. It's really bad, because it's very weak anti-China type of rhetoric. And it's very slimy, because it can go over some people's heads. But it actually signifies how he would be foreign policy wise. You'd still get away with this sort of anti-China legislation. You would still get away with probably the anti-Iran legislation, the anti-Russian legislation. You'd still get away with that sort of foreign policy. So really, his supporters should be demanding more of him, because I think it's a little bit hypocritical to talk about Kennedy's failures and then not point out these blatant foreign policy blunders from Cornel West. If I'm going to call out Kennedy, I'm going to call out Cornel West as well. So,
yeah. The whole thing with him running independent really kind of makes me it puzzles me, right? Because one of the main reasons why you were going to run as a Green, at least what I thought, is ballot access. You're going to have much more easier time for ballot access, even though the Green Party's got a lot of work to do. They're still way ahead. And like I said, as he doesn't have the foot soldiers to get out there and get ballot access in 50 states. And when you're looking at this, what's the word I want to say, the field right now and how it's going to play out, I've said this before. Kennedy running as an independent is going to take away more votes from Donald Trump than he will from Joe Biden. Well, the opposite is the same for Cornel West. He's going to take away more votes from Joe Biden than he would for Donald Trump. And now it seems he's going to take away less votes as an independent because he has more ballot access. Less ballot. He would have had more ballot access as a Green. Now he's going to have less ballot access, so less votes taken away from Joe Biden. It almost seems like that's what he's doing. I think that Friendly Brilliant said in the chat he wants the Democrats to win at the end of the day. And I think he kind of feels that way too as well. I mean, what's the only other reason for making this decision? And then this rhetoric over here, it's just troubling.
Okay, so let's go back to what we were going to talk about initially, which was the Sanders situation with the Code Pink that happened at the same event where Cornel was at. So this is all going on.
Jamie might have an opinion, fam. He was at that event. Yeah. Really quickly, if you have an opinion about that event, how many masks were people wearing when you were there?
I'd say probably about 25-ish people were wearing masks there, but there was like well over, I'd say probably about 200 people in the crowd.
Okay,
but yeah, like I mean, like, it's Washington D.C. You're still gonna. I mean, there's been people who've been wearing masks the whole time. Anyhow, it was a closed event. You had to RSVP to get in, so he was speaking to a captive audience, or what's the better thing to say is a
echo chamber.
The echo chamber, the bubble. But I will say I missed that part of the speech. You were the one who pointed it out to me, and I was there sitting there live, because the rest of the speech was actually I thought was very good. It was very anti-imperialist through and through. It's like you can't imagine like any of the Republican or Democratic politicians saying half the things he was saying up there about talking about America's military bases being all around the world and all the problems that we're the ones who caused it all. I mean, all that, the rest of the speech was very on point. So yeah, that little part you played there did slip by me. I didn't catch it, but because I was so enamored by the rest of it. And I will say this, I've seen Cornel West speak a lot of times online, but I'd never seen him in person before. And he is a great speaker. He is. Really
he is a great speaker.
Wow. I mean, you just completely get sucked in. And this was after seeing Claudia de la Cruz speak, who did a fantastic job, and Lee Camp, who was making us laugh about the stupid war, which was actually, I thought that was kind of impressive. He was able to do that. But the crowd was very much, of a similar mind. So my biggest criticism of him as a presidential candidate, when he goes up there and speaks, he doesn't say anything about the fact that he's running for president. And like at the very least, when he ends the speech, he should say, "My name is Cornel West, and I'm running for U.S. president." I mean, he didn't even do that. Now, granted, this audience, everybody knew that, but somebody's going to watch that speech for the first time, and they might not know. I mean, you got to say that over and over every single time. So my feelings on Cornel West is I do think, he has a few blind spots here and there, but overall, I do like him. And I wish we had 1,000 Cornel Wests that were in political office. I think the kind of message that he's bringing is what would actually make our country a hell of a lot better. But the problem with Cornel West is he's an academic. He's not a politician, which is probably why he's so likable. He's a very likable person. But unfortunately, when you're running for president of the United States, you got to be a politician. You need to know how to politic. And he's not very good at that at all. It's not his strength. But all his strengths are things that make him likable, make him somebody you want to to follow, and you would like to see more people like him in power. But the problem is, our system does not reward people who act like him. It does not favor that, and he doesn't have the skills that you need to succeed in our political system. Unfortunately, I still like him, but
can I say something though too as well? But I mean, he's got a lot of things that we like. But I listened to that whole speech. That's not a speech for the populace. That's a speech for your echo chamber. There's a lot more pressing issues that I wish he was paying attention to that he ain't even talking about, even touching upon. You know, that whole interview with Jimmy was really revealing too as well, because the one time Jimmy was giving him the hands and the fists and saying, yes, he went out of his way to kick himself right in the fucking dick and say, well, you know, we're talking about this. Maybe we're living in two worlds. It's just not as that important to me anymore. I'm like, why would you do something like that? It's almost like you're purposely trying to tank your campaign. He has zero populist message. That speech was not anything special to me.
Well,
yeah, I'm glad when he started talking about the foreign policy, but he left out so many different things. And who was he talking to again? Good.
To be fair, that speech was not a campaign speech. He was speaking to an anti-war group talking about anti-war action. So he was staying on topic. He was staying on topic. It was not a campaign speech.
When you are running for president, there's going to be a camera on you 24/7. Every single speech.
I agree.
To be about your campaign, inclusive to both. He could have easily changed that speech, left out certain things, right? And I get it. You're a blues man. I get it. Like you're cool. Well, you're not talking to the populace. You're not making any grounds. If anything, you're going backwards with these speeches.
And he wasn't talking to the populace in that speech.
He was talking to a bunch of left anti-war activists.
Right.
So he knew his audience.
Yeah, he was speaking directly to that audience.
Yeah. Why would he talk about anything else that
speech is going
a
to be
bunch
recorded,
of libertarians are going to care about?
It's going to be recorded. It's going to be played, and you can use it. First of all, when you're running for president, you're running for president. He's not running for president. That's what I'm saying. There's no time off to go on the side and have a special speech for these people. Right. You incorporate it.
Well, this is the thing. This is where
it's just an event, though.
His advisors need to be there telling him this, and they need to be looking at. Yeah, well, whoever, if it's just him or whoever else.
I probably told him about the Uyghur shit because he's the one who fucking made those tweets 3-4 years ago.
Maybe, possibly.
He did know. There's a tweet out there. I'll go find it right now with Peter Dow. Hold on. I'll go find it.
Okay.
Yeah, well, can we move on? Because this is, we're still talking about Cornel West and running, and we're supposed to, this is like, I gotta go soon. This is like,
it's
like an hour long. Yeah, we keep getting stuck on this whole Cornel West running and blah blah blah. Like, we get you don't like him, Pasta. I don't think he's a good candidate. I don't think RFK is a good candidate. I don't think either of them are good candidates. I think they appeal to different people though, so they're gonna say the things that appeal to their voter base. Everybody has a voter base.
I'll disagree slightly. I think he's a good candidate, but I think he's a terrible politician, and that's not going to cut it in the presidential race.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So.
All right. So.
Let's move on.
Sorry. Yeah. Can we go back to the Sanders thing? Because I've really been wanting to talk about that for like the last 15 minutes. And we just keep going back to Cornel West. So Bernie Sanders did this whole thing, right? Where he had these activists arrested. Now, it was his staff that had these activists arrested. So I said, how far from the revolutionary that once went to the Soviet Union? Because if you remember, him and Jane took a trip to the Soviet Union. And I said, he's a disgrace. I mean, everybody here at one point supported Bernie Sanders on his run as a president. And we said, oh, look at this guy. He's got the chance to take us there. He had Cornell, he had Tulsi on the first run of his campaign. And here he is. This is, of course, after he tweeted that the United States should continue supporting Ukraine against Russia, Russia's illegal, attacks and blah, blah, blah. It could have been said by, Chuck Schumer. It could have been said by any of these establishment Democrats. So let's watch this video because this is a activist from Code Pink getting arrested. And let's watch it.
Why are you getting arrested, Jody? Why? It says that Bernie is for diplomacy. I'm here to remind him that he knows diplomacy is the right thing. He knows peace is the right thing. We're here to tell him we need peace. he needs to call on Biden to go to the negotiating table. Don't tell us that Putin won't, because the United States isn't. Do it. Do it. Let them fail. You're failing right now. Let them fail. People are dying. This happened. I was here 21 years ago, and they didn't listen. And 6 million people are dead because of the war in Iraq. We have to listen. War kills. Weapons kill. We have to stop this war. People are dying, and the people in the United States are paying for it.
Does the people in the United States want a war?
No, the people in the United States do not want a war, and they're paying for it. Not only are they paying for it with their tax dollars, but they're paying for it in the shredding of this literal fabric of society. When we think that weapons are the way, what happens? Then the only way that you can have a discussion, the only way that you can work on differences is with weapons and guns. That's not how it happens. Nothing is solved with weapons and guns. Nothing. Where's the leadership that models sitting down at a table and coming up with some agreements? This has to end. We have to stop this war to World War III.
When you used to say being anti-war. What do we want?
Peace. What do we want now? What do we want? Peace.
Okay, so all right, so first of all, yeah, she's right, but the thing is, Russia has tried negotiating, but every time there's a talk about negotiating, they keep them out and they say Ukraine's going to negotiate with the United States. How is that a negotiation? So it is on the United States. It is on, but Bernie calling on Biden isn't going to do anything. Biden's not running the show. But, I get what they're trying to do. I support their anti-war message. But so I thought this was a good thing that they did. I'm not a huge fan of Code Pink's foreign policy stances when it comes to Syria, when it comes to Iran, when it comes to Russia, Ukraine. They've been pretty iffy. But the fact that they went out on this, and
let me say one thing though, real quick, Graham. It's not Code Pink in all. Medea has different views than different people in Code Pink. We know that. So not everybody shares the same views within Code Pink, but yes, you're right. Medea is the face of it. And like I said, this is the good Medea yesterday, not the bad Medea. But as we get along, we'll point out even a bigger problem, I think. Go ahead.
Yeah, so then what ended up happening was Marjorie Taylor Greene came out and was like, oh, let's take a photo because I support what you're doing, trying to stop the funding of weapons to Ukraine. And they sort of decided to say, oh no, right? So she said the war in Ukraine must end. Today I met brave Code Pink activists who protested for peace in Bernie Sanders' office. He had 11 of them arrested. Peace and free speech shouldn't be a partisan issue. We don't agree on most things, but we do agree Congress should stop fueling the war in Ukraine. This is a good thing. I'm not a huge fan of Marjorie Taylor Greene, but let me tell you, I like her better than I like AOC. And the thing is, this is great. She's a Republican. Okay, who cares? She's supporting. Look who she's with. She's there with our good friend there,
Dr. Dave.
And Dr. Dave, and like Dr. Dave. And so, the sign says Ukraine is not the 51st state, negotiate peace in Ukraine, blah, blah, blah. So this is good. And look, you have Marjorie Taylor Greene standing there. So why is this a bad thing? Can somebody tell me why is this a bad thing? Right? It's not, it's a good thing. You have a member of Congress that is jumping on with a bunch of leftist anti-war hippie activists that are saying, let's stop the funding in Ukraine. This is what makes the establishment shake. This is what they're afraid of. This is absolutely what needs to happen. Unite with anybody against war. That's the whole thing with the Rage Against the War Machine. That's the whole thing that this whole thing was supposed to be about. That was a win for Code Pink. And then they freaking shoot themselves in the foot by making this really, really dumb statement on Twitter, backing away from Marjorie Taylor Greene, saying that, she came up to them, and this is from the official Code Pink Twitter, There has been some confusion about an image that was taken with Code Pink volunteers, and Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene, MTG, opportunistically approached our volunteers in a parking lot on the Hill, and she requested that they take a photo together. And then
she
if
was
you just
being
scroll down,
opportunistic. How is she being opportunistic? She was showing plain and simple that I don't give a shit if they're leftists, Democrats, whatever. We want to end this war. We need to come together and end this fucking war. This is shooting yourself in the foot. No, it's shooting yourself in the private part.
So then she continues, our volunteers weren't sure how to respond and immediately reached out to us about what happened after the fact. The picture was not initiated by our organization. We will continue to organize against war and demand our resources be reinvested into human needs like housing, universal healthcare, and education. There is a difference between being anti-war and not wanting funding for Ukraine war. To be anti-war, you must be an internationalist. Blah, 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 blah. So, okay, so now they get into their whole ideology of what it means to be anti-war. You must be an internationalist. First of all, I don't agree with an internationalist because that can mean several different things depending on what you believe in. So that just adds more confusion to the thing, because Trotsky was one of these people and he was just a mess. So I don't like Trotsky. I'm not a fan. So it's just like this whole thing, it was just really confusing to me. The last, I was like, where are you going with this? I don't get it. It was so dumb, because you want to have any support for anti-war, because that's how you get things done in Congress. The more support you have, the more likely this funding is to stop for the war. The more, not just public support, but also support in DC. So why the hell would you back away from that? And then, and this person, Marjorie Taylor Greene, is coming to you and saying, we may not agree on everything, or we may disagree on a lot of things, but we agree on this. Duh, nobody's saying you automatically adopt all the viewpoints of Marjorie Taylor Greene. But my issue with Code Pink here is they are virtue signaling and tipping their hat to the Ilhan Omars, the Rashida Tlaibs, the AOCs, the progressive wings. That's exactly what they're doing. That's why they said this, because they don't want to look bad in their eyes, because Marjorie Taylor Greene and AOC and that squad have this beef with each other, right? And so that's why they're doing this, because they want to make sure everybody knows that they're still left and that they don't want anything to do with the icky cooties of Marjorie Taylor Greene's right wing, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You said it, right?
You mentioned
the squad
the
and the activists.
squad,
Yeah,
the PSL
the activists said it,
people.
fam. The PSL, the activists said it. This could take us to nuclear war. So why the hell does it matter what your cliques think or how good you make AOC look? AOC and the squad voted for more weapons, for cluster munitions, for depleted uranium to be sent to neo-Nazis in Ukraine. And you're telling me that you want to still make sure they're good in your book. Are they as disgusted when they're like fawning over AOC, when they're fawning over the squad? No, they're not. But to me, I'm sorry, the squad has been far more pro-war than Marjorie Taylor Greene. Whether you like Marjorie Taylor Greene or not, those are facts. Simple as that. It's so stupid.
Let's go to that video that Danko was playing on the Hill with Cornel West next to her, because I think that's important to play too as well, because once again, here's Brianna Dory-Gray kind of doing something similar to when it comes to her tweet. I don't know why she would put it up there and why it was important to point that out.
Republicans aren't exactly against funding for Ukraine for the same reasons Code Pink is. They don't want to funnel all of this war money, the Pentagon budget and foreign military aid, into things like that matter, like healthcare, accessibility, and that sort of thing.
I think it's a really important point, Danica. And I love to mention that when we had an opportunity to interview Marjorie Taylor Greene on this show, and I asked her more broadly whether she supported cuts to the military budget, she said no, despite being opposed to the war in Ukraine. So I do think it's important to ask conservatives where they do plan to spend the money in the interim.
The Republicans.
Why is it important? Why is it important to point that out? I mean, we can say this and we can talk about this. I can talk about the fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene didn't vote to remove the speaker, right? To remove Kevin McCarthy. And one of the big reasons why Matt Gaetz pushed that was the funding of the war. And if you really wanted to fund the war so bad, why wouldn't you remove the speaker? We can have conversations about these things, but it is not important. What it was important that she got out there, put her differences aside to come to a common goal and stop this war. A couple weeks ago, when Jimmy went on the road, went on vacation, did all that thing, I was given the keys to the kingdom. I decided to double down the Ukrainian rhetoric out there because Zelensky was coming to town, and I thought it was important to push back, to come together no matter what. And I said this, I don't care who is, if I was in D.C. right now, I'd go out there while Zelensky was in town with his sign. I would stand with anybody who wants to end this war, and that's really, really important. So I don't understand why it is important, why you have to virtue signal, why you have to take away from the message, why you have to downplay it, degrade it, water it down, when you're supposed to be serious about ending the war with a nuclear threat. And that's the thing that just blows my mind right now. And it tells me that these people aren't serious. And that's why their group is small, their echo chamber is small, they haven't been able to grow. They did the same thing with the Rage Against the War Machine bullshit, right? Like, couldn't speak because there's people in the Mises caucus and they use this one fucking CIA line. Chuck Modi uses it. A bunch of other people use it, and they don't even realize they're repeating CIA talking points. I don't want to come together with somebody else for a common goal when they want to hurt me after. I mean, what the fuck does that even mean? Who wants to hurt you after just because they disagree with you? It's bullshit, fam. And this is more of that fucking same. Go ahead.
Damn, fam, you're like on with the curse words today.
My
when
bad.
your mom's
Mom,
not
sorry.
watching, you're nonstop.
Well, this stuff is so stupid sometimes.
So no, I mean, I agree that it's important to acknowledge those differences. We acknowledge them all the time when we're talking about these things. Like you just talked about the China with Matt Gaetz, like, taking money away from Ukraine to just give it to Taiwan for Beijing. It's important to talk about the fact that they're not really, they're not necessarily in it for the same reasons, but it's not, I don't know if she was referring to that moment. It's not important in that moment, because in that moment, Marjorie Taylor Greene is coming to you and she's saying, I support stopping the funding of Ukraine. You say, yes, thank you. Can we count on your vote on the record to continue to stop funding to this and blah, blah, blah. And then you make that happen. It's happened many times. People have made things happen in this way. It is very dumb to, again, go and say, well, at this moment right now, I have to say, well, Marjorie, you are a Republican, so we just can't be seen together because it will piss off that's basically what they're saying. So it's just really dumb. And I think it hurt what they were trying to do. It hurt the cause that they were trying to do by protesting against the war, to only then backtrack and be like, no, but we're only going to protest and stand by people who, who are what? Democrats? Are Democrats better than Republicans? They're not. They're not at this point. It just shows you where that end of the left is and why they just don't advance in any sort of way. And it's very much a Western type of problem and a US type of problem that you have on the left, because I just don't see that happening elsewhere, really. Yeah, it's really dumb.
Go ahead and bring up Fee's tweet.
Oh, yeah. It's just basically what I said. This is what, by the way, if you're an anti-war organization, this is exactly. Yeah. This is exactly what you don't do. No, that's not the right one.
I got it.
Yeah, that one. Blah 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 blah. Yeah. Again, this is being done to please people like AOC, and they have been the ones that have supported the arming of these Nazis. So, yeah, and they're still going along with it. And we'll get to the next section. We'll get to Matt Gaetz section. So this is responding to show Brianna Joy Grace. Okay, so she said, I asked MTG on Rising whether she supported cuts to the military budget. She says, no, I don't want to cut military spending. Marjorie Taylor Greene is not an anti-war politician. She's singularly anti-war. There may be narrow opportunities to work together. Anti-Ukraine.
But we should. What?
She's singularly anti-Ukraine.
Anti-Ukraine. There may be narrow opportunities to work together, but we should be clear about what she believes. Why is it so important for us to be clear about what she believes when we should be focusing on the fact, and you can see what I said, it might be a narrow opportunity, but it's a humongous issue. And when parties with opposing views can come together to obtain a common goal, such as the funding a bloody war, such as the one in Ukraine, it is a win-win situation. We should be highlighting this moment rather distracting the public with possible future discrepancies. The focus should be on what she said, what she's doing, ending the Ukraine war. First things first. Then we can get to pushing back against the future discrepancies when it does come up, when it comes about China and funding and whatnot. Yeah, we get it. She's not an anti-war candidate. Neither is Donald Trump. Go ahead.
We know she's not an anti-war candidate. We know this. Like, especially, we know this. So, I mean, but it doesn't mean that you don't take her support against funding Ukraine and run with it and say, good, you're making, thank you, Marjorie Taylor Greene, you're making the Democrats look like the war party, which they are, and they have been. But they're afraid to say that because they still think, bottom line, these people still think Democrats are better than Republicans. And that goes for Cornell, that goes for all of his supporters, that goes for Brianna Joy Gray, they all think Democrats are better than Republicans. I don't think that. I think they're both trash. And I can tell you one thing right now, that the Marjorie Taylor Greene has been more anti-war or anti-funding for Ukraine, however you want to name it, which is a good thing, than any of the squad. And that gets more points for me because that's an actuality. I don't have to support Marjorie Taylor Greene on her stances against socialism. I don't have to support. It doesn't mean I wear a Marjorie Taylor Greene fan shirt. It just means that I'm literally acting on the reality of the situation. Matt Gaetz has been more anti-funding of fascists than anybody of the squad, than Bernie Sanders. So is that insane? I don't like Matt Gaetz. Oh, well, but that is a fact. So tomorrow when Matt Gaetz becomes a pro-war or continues to be a pro-war monger when it comes to China, I'll say, Matt Gaetz, you're this and this and that. You need to stop, blah, blah, blah. But again, this is an issue where they don't know how to differentiate because they always regress to the fact that we must oppose all Republicans at all costs because they're ideologues and they're coming at this from Democrats are better than Republicans. So even if a Republican does something good, they have to in some form or another say yes, but no, they're doing this because they always believe that Democrats are still better than Republicans. And that's the bottom line. Whereas if you actually understand that both parties are two sides of the same coin, you're not going to you're not going to play this team sport mentality. You're just not, because you understand that. So that's in my opinion why they can't do that.
It's a fact, fam. Matt Gaetz is more anti-war than Bernie Sanders, period. Plain and simple. Don't give a shit what anybody has to say. Sue me for it. I tweeted it. It's out there. Deal with it. Deal with it. Deal with it. You know, we got to stop Putin's aggression.